The conversation surrounding the Sussex family has grown louder over the years, not because of confirmed events, but because of the public's fascination with royal traditions,
Meghan and Harry are not
and the unusual way
entitled to
information was
privacy in
released
this
during
matter.
key moments of Harry and Meghan's transition
Their
out of royal
privacy
life.
is trumped by
Much of the debate has been fueled by
right
gaps
to
in
know
communication,
that no
mixed messaging from
bastard
different
is going to
sources,
sit
and
on
the
the
understandable
throne of
tension
this
between
country.
personal
All
privacy
Harry
and the
Meghan
public
need to
interest that
do
always follows members of the royal family. What should be simple moments, like birth announcements or official paperwork, ended up feeling more complicated because the palace and the Sussexes often communicated differently and at different times. This created confusion and left room for speculation. When Archie was born, the timing of the announcements and the way the information was shared didn't follow the familiar royal pattern. For decades, royal births have been handled with a very specific sequence: a formal announcement from the palace, confirmation from medical staff, and a consistent timeline. In this case, the public first learned of the birth through a mix of reports and later statements, which made some people feel uncertain about what had actually happened and when. The moment should have been joyful, but the messaging created frustration because people were used to a predictable protocol that suddenly wasn't there. Later, attention turned to updates made to Archie's birth certificate. The change itself wasn't dramatic, but it was unusual enough to raise questions. Different explanations came from different sides, and with no unified story, the public filled in the blanks on their own. When public figures share limited information during moments that traditionally involve clarity, even small inconsistencies can grow into larger discussions. Lilibet's birth created a similar reaction, not because of confirmed issues, but because the entire process took place outside the United Kingdom. Without the familiar royal announcements or the traditional ceremonial markers, many people simply didn't know what applied anymore. A family carving out a new life has the right to make their own choices, but the public often expects royal traditions to continue regardless of distance. When those traditions don't happen, it creates uncertainty, even when nothing is actually wrong. The same dynamic appeared again around the topic of christenings. Normally, royal christenings take place in the United Kingdom, surrounded by Church of England traditions, official photographs, and confirmation from the palace. With Lilibet's ceremony happening privately in California, the usual markers weren't visible to the public. This caused questions not because of any confirmed issue, but because people did not see the process they were accustomed to. Most of the tension in this entire situation comes from expectations. The royal family is an institution built on tradition, consistency, and established procedures. Harry and Meghan, on the other hand, made decisions based on privacy, independence, and a desire to limit public intrusion into their personal lives. Those two approaches don't always blend smoothly, and the resulting communication gaps created a long list of unanswered questions that fueled public debate. Inside the palace, the priority has always been clarity around official matters, especially when it comes to the line of succession. For the Sussexes, the priority has always been protecting their children and controlling their own narrative. Neither side necessarily did anything wrong, but the disconnect between expectations and communication left many feeling confused. Today, the broader conversation isn't about confirmed facts or hidden events. It is about how modern families, even royal ones, balance privacy, public roles, tradition, and personal freedom. It is also about how fast speculation spreads when institutions and individuals communicate differently than the public expects. No matter how the story evolves, one thing is clear: transparency, privacy, and the public's fascination with royalty will always be in delicate balance. In the end, the hope is that the children at the center of these discussions grow up with stability, respect, and space to define their own futures, free from unnecessary drama created by speculation or misunderstanding. The public fascination with royalty has always lived in the space between tradition and perception. What people believe, what they expect, and what they imagine often carries as much weight as what is officially said. Part 1 explored how the communication gap surrounding the Sussexes created uncertainty. Part 2 goes deeper into why these moments matter to people, how institutions respond to public pressure, and what this long-term shift means for the monarchy, the media, and the global audience watching every move. For centuries, the monarchy operated inside a world defined by ceremony, hierarchy, and predictability. Every event, from weddings to christenings, followed a carefully curated formula designed to reassure the public that the institution was stable and consistent. In a system where continuity equals legitimacy, the rhythm of tradition became the backbone of public trust. So when a new generation, especially one as public as Harry and Meghan, stepped outside these patterns, the response was inevitably emotional. Not because something confirmed had happened, but because something familiar suddenly felt unfamiliar. To understand the tension surrounding their children's early years, it's important to understand how symbolic these traditions are in the eyes of the public. The monarchy uses rituals to reinforce the idea that even personal moments carry constitutional weight. When those rituals are altered or absent, people naturally begin to ask why, even if there is no underlying issue. For example, when royal announcements appear without the usual sequence of official confirmations, the public mind fills the blank spaces with guesses, interpretations, and narratives shaped by years of seeing things done the same way. But the transition of Harry and Meghan from working royals to independent public figures changed that dynamic dramatically. They began prioritizing privacy, personal agency, and modern boundaries over long-established practices that historically existed to reassure the public. In their world, moments like birth announcements were intimate family events. In the royal world, they were constitutional milestones. This fundamental difference in perspective explains much of the friction that developed in the years that followed. Another part of the puzzle comes from the relationship between the monarchy and the media. For generations, the palace and the press relied on each other. The media received access, photos, and interviews in exchange for helping maintain the institution's visibility and stability. When Harry and Meghan stepped back and moved to the United States, the long-standing media rhythm fractured. Some outlets continued treating them as working royals, while others portrayed them as celebrities. Meanwhile, the couple attempted to reshape their public image through controlled interviews, documentaries, and independent media projects. The result was a complex mix of narratives that often clashed. Some reports emphasized tradition, others emphasized independence, and the audience was left navigating two entirely different frameworks. This disconnect created more confusion and allowed speculation to spread more easily. What for one side was a simple attempt to protect family privacy became, for the other side, a deviation from protocol. The tension between these perspectives fueled a cycle that neither the palace nor the Sussexes seemed prepared to resolve. What makes this situation even more unique is that the public has never been more globally connected. In the past, royal information was filtered through a handful of newspapers. Today, millions of voices online shape the narrative instantly, often without context or verification. A single misunderstanding can be amplified into a worldwide conversation before official channels even have the chance to speak. In such an environment, the absence of clarity is often interpreted as intentional, even if it's not. This phenomenon isn't limited to the royals. It reflects a broader cultural shift in how people respond to public figures. Privacy is valued, but mystery sparks curiosity. And when a public figure belongs to a historic institution, curiosity grows even faster. The audience doesn't necessarily seek private details. They seek reassurance that the system they've observed for generations is still functioning predictably. When that reassurance doesn't come, attention turns into analysis, then into speculation, even when no solid information supports the theories being discussed. In the case of the Sussexes, every absence of detail became a talking point. Every delay in communication, every statement released through a non-traditional channel, every difference between past and present procedures became a point of public discussion. It wasn't that something confirmed had occurred, rather, the break in rhythm was enough to spark debate. In a world accustomed to official announcements delivered in a precise order, anything outside that pattern felt like a deviation. Meanwhile, within the monarchy, consistency remains essential. Institutions often operate on precedent because precedent ensures stability. Every change, even small ones, must be evaluated to ensure they don't unintentionally set future expectations or create confusion decades down the line. So when modern life collides with historical protocol, advisors naturally examine how to adjust or respond. That examination does not imply wrongdoing. It simply reflects the monarchy's long-standing responsibility to maintain clarity in all matters tied to the institution. One of the key themes of this situation is the contrast between public visibility and personal boundaries. Royal families have always walked a delicate line between openness and privacy. The public wants access, but the families want normalcy. This tension intensified in the digital age, where images and stories circulate far beyond traditional media channels. For Harry and Meghan, This dynamic became especially challenging as they built careers rooted in storytelling, advocacy, and media projects while also striving to maintain privacy for their children. This duality naturally created challenges. When children appear occasionally in polished documentary footage or curated holiday photos, but traditional royal documentation is absent, audiences receive only fragments of information. Those fragments, even when benign, can feel incomplete compared to what people historically expect from royal families. And incomplete information almost always invites interpretation. Meanwhile, the palace approaches children of the royal family with constitutional considerations in mind. Their names, titles, and ceremonial milestones tie into a long-standing lineage system. These traditions aren't about surveillance, they're about continuity. They ensure that future historians, constitutional scholars, and legal authorities have clear documentation of every generation. When those traditions shift, even for normal and understandable reasons, the institution must assess how to maintain consistency going forward. It's also important to recognize that the palace rarely comments on private family matters. Silence is part of its communication strategy, designed to avoid escalating speculation. But silence in the digital age can be misinterpreted as confirmation, even when it's simply standard practice. This disconnect between traditional institutional communication and modern public reaction has magnified nearly every misunderstanding in the Sussex story.